I feel like one of the factors that tend to get overlooked or undermined in our lives is time. In most times, pun intended here, people usually tend to forget or overlook how time tends to affect and change us in ways that, for starters, we've never imagined ourselves to change or to become. And the experiences that tend to shape who we are and who we are about to become. In the most recent times, as I started getting to know someone, recently, I started befriending somebody new. And that person is reminding me a lot of how I used to be when I was their age.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as time goes on, the more I'm realizing that, the more I realize the importance of it and how it changes us in many ways, and how we tend to not just grow older, but we tend to get more and more humbled by
Mm-hmm.
life.
Experience.
And when you see people that have either similar past experiences or similar personalities to you, when you see them in a younger age, in the age where you were used to be at like years ago, you start remembering, or you start seeing a reflection of yourself in
Mm-hmm.
them. Even though at the time when I was their age, I used to perceive myself completely different.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, when I was, I don't know, let's say 20, 21, 19, somewhere there, I used to perceive myself as someone who is extremely confident, someone who is mature, someone who is too old for their age, which I was to a certain degree. I'm not denying that fact. But the way that I was perceiving myself and reality were completely different
Mm-hmm.
things. And the more that I meet new people, and especially younger people, the more that I see that in like a real face value. Because I'm seeing them react, behave, say, and do things in the same manner that I used to do it. And then I get reminded of like, I was not nowhere near how I perceived or I assumed myself to be,
Yeah.
which is a really humbling experience. Because, you know, that kind of reminds you, first of all, I'm going to go a little bit off topic here, but that kind of reminds you, first of all, of the importance of perception and how your perspective as well, and how you see yourself versus how other people see you, or maybe versus how you behave in the world. And then number two, it again, I'm just repeating myself here. It reminds you of time, age, and maturity, regardless of how old or how young you are, and regardless of your past experience. Time plays a big, important role in, we're gonna call it self-development here, whether it is self-development or not.
But I feel like before we talk about time itself, I feel like there are two important factors why time plays a role in your maturity. The first one is kind of not related to time itself, but just for the fact that your brain keeps developing until you are
Definitely.
25, 26. And no matter how much trauma you've had in the past as a child, or how many experiences, no matter how much you experience every year when you were younger, your brain is still developing until you're 26. So someone who is 28 years old is still gonna have different cognitive functions and perception than someone who is still 23 years old, because someone who's 28 years old, his brain is already fully developed. And another factor is just the fact that the older you get, the more experiences you have gathered throughout time. The more you have seen things repeat themselves, the more you have seen people say the same bullshit and repeat their patterns, and you repeat your own patterns, the more you start to understand why you are repeating the same thing, why things keep happening the way they are. And you need time, you need age to notice that. When you are 20 years old, maybe things happened once or twice. You still don't have a full picture of things. But when you're 30 years old, maybe things have repeated themselves 4 times or 5 times. And that's when you start to change more, seeing things repeating themselves. I feel like these two factors are really, really important in why time
Another
plays that role.
perspective on those factors is, I guess, our self-awareness, like our prefrontal cortex, fully develops around the age of 25, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
exactly
what I was trying to say.
And I guess, not I guess, but I heard this from Andrew Huberman, if I'm not mistaken. that around the age 25, where when your prefrontal cortex fully develops, that's when that's when you kind of develop like a more self-awareness of yourself. That's where your consciousness kind of starts functioning more, and you start perceiving yourself and the world around you more.
Something important to say, that this is not universally true, because people with ADHD, it might take them even longer.
Definitely.
They might be over 30 and their frontal cortex is still not fully developed.
There is, well, I like to call them minority or exceptions,
sure.
but like the majority or the rule or the science states this.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's true.
As well as like the joke that, when people go like the memes or the jokes they see everyone on social media as well, where people show you when you're 20 years old and you're not aware of anything, and suddenly you're 25 and it's like, you're just like, oh fuck, I'm alive, I'm living.
Yeah,
life is happening. Like, what the fuck?
It's like a pre-midlife crisis.
Exactly.
Like a warm-up.
Yeah, kinda. I guess you can look at it like this, because when you become aware, it's like you were hit by a truck, technically, by all the facts, everything. Truck. Exactly. And then that's like the first warm up for the endless amount of accidents or trucks that are gonna hit you in life.
Exactly.
But yeah, back to the topic. Time. I'm going back. I'm gonna keep going back to time, because it's a big subject and it's kind of hard to try to pin it down to something specific. Because if you're gonna talk about time in relation to self-development and growing, maybe, or finding out who you are, what you want to do, whatever it is that when people want to describe it nowadays, time plays a role in different factors. First of all, how we get stuck in the past and how we learn to let go of the past. That's time related. And then how we view the present and how we view the future. Plus, of course, what you've said, experience is the most important thing. Patterns that you see, your self-development, your brain fully develops, and you become able of.
It's all related to how you view your traumas and the past.
Definitely.
I feel like, but this is mostly like your experiences and your brain development. When you're relating to your trauma, so this is mostly about the past. Maybe this is mostly about when we get stuck in the past. So when you get older, you start to be able to change certain patterns and view your experience maybe in a different way. But maybe this is not necessarily true when you are viewing your future.
I think it's like also when you grow older, you start taking on more responsibility.
Sure.
And sometimes it's not willingly. Sometimes just like responsibility either get dumped on you, or you subconsciously take on responsibilities either for yourself, for people around you, for whatever it is. And when you start taking on responsibility, you kind of start having like a goal to work toward. And you start kind of losing yourself in the action, whether it's because of the flow state or because of, you just got stuff to do, and then you start forgetting or stop thinking about the past. And then, that the most, a psychologist, if I'm not mistaken, a scientist from America. I hope that I'm not mixing things up here. Went on a podcast with somebody. Look at this. It's me again with my not full information. Regardless, she mentioned that the most cause for depression is the fact that people talk about their past, and not their past, but their traumas, their experience. They keep on talking about it, and then they keep on reminding themselves of the event, of the emotions that occurred, and then the brain gets stuck in that loop. And when you get older, you usually tend to, like I said, take on more responsibility. And then when you do, you have kind of less time to think about your traumas, your problems, and all of this, because you've got stuff to deal with and stuff to take care of. And then that automatically kind of reduces that automatically kind of gets you to forget or maybe let go of the past to a certain degree, because the brain is not always reminded of the past.
You're putting attention on other things.
Exactly. Your focus is going somewhere else.
It's like the same when we say maybe in the past, before technologies and everything, like let's say 200 years ago, 300 years ago, people had less time to think about depression or anxiety because they were more focused on the reality in the moment. What's happening right now? How do we survive today?
It's not only this, they had also look at it like this. They had to work way more than we do. Their works required more energy than our works do nowadays. Nothing was automated. Everything required, like if you want it the most basic example, if you wanted to watch a movie, you can't just sit at home and watch it instantly. You have to look at it up on the cinemas. When is it being shown? And then you have to plan going there, and then you have to buy the tickets and get in and watch
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
And that's
And-
all time consuming.
And basically,
so,
our most valuable currency is attention. And when you are more occupied in your life, you have more responsibilities, more things to do, especially things to do every day, then you are less prone to depression and anxiety and just dwelling too much on the past and having anxiety of the future. So, yeah.
It's also related to the fact that in today's society, we've got a lot of stuff that give us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to philosophize a little bit here. We usually tend to forget that only the present exists. And of course, when people talk about only now exists, my question to that is like, what is now? Is it the second that is that already that the present is already gone? You know what I mean? Because if you're going to talk about the now, then what is the now?
I think it is, in my opinion, it's something unrelated to time, but we take it as like this second. But
it's not only because a lot of people take the now, for example, as a day. Today is the present.
That's not.
People say now is like what I'm doing in this second, but the second already passed the second that you thought about the second. You know what I mean?
The present is every moment you are living. Like it's not a certain second. It's just you're breathing in, you're breathing out. This is the present, and when you have done that already, it's already in the past, and your next breath is in the future. But the present is everything that is happening. Well,
what is
in the moment?
What is going on in my brain lately is that instead of time, I'm starting to prefer the word be present instead of the present.
Be present.
Be present instead of the present. Because, like I said, for me, what is the present? What is now? I like the way you described it, as in when you are the present, that's the now. But then the now still doesn't really exist. Regardless, what I'm trying to go with this is that we tend to forget that time does not exist. Time is something subjective.
It's very subjective.
In the sense of, first of all, when you get in a flow state, time passes by really fast. When you're doing something that's really mundane and boring and you're hating yourself for doing that, time doesn't flow at all.
When you take psychedelics,
time goes differently. In every scenario, time goes differently. And if you're going to talk about the past, I've asked this question a few days ago, I guess, and you were present there. I asked if the past actually exists or not. Because you can go to the past.
I mean, we have basically we have things that we can say these things happened. We have books that were written in the past, but you can't go back.
You know, no one has ever managed to go back to the past. No. You can only do it in your mind, and that's the way people. I'm relating time right now also to why people get stuck in the past, because in their minds they go to the past or they keep on going to the past, and the brain cannot comprehend the difference between what's real and what's not. So the brain is always reliving what's happening in the past, and then people get stuck in the past, and they tend to forget that the past doesn't exist.
But that's why I feel like
you can't change it. You cannot relive it physically. You can only relive it spiritually, mentally, emotionally, if that's what you want to call it.
But this is why I feel like time is kind of an enemy, like our enemy, because
not necessarily.
Because I feel like the biggest reasons why we don't do anything in our lives to improve, to grow, to get out of the holes that we are being stuck in is just we are too much dwelling on the past or just too anxious about the future. It's just one of those two. One of those two that makes us so stuck that we just don't know how to move on. We have this big trauma that happened and we keep thinking about it and we feel the same emotions again and again, like in PTSD, and or you're someone who's just thinking about the future and you feel like there is no hope for you. You're always going to be a loser who doesn't do anything, who doesn't see a bright future in front of them, which gives you depression. So, but when you are in the present, in this moment, you're just engaged in something that you're doing, then your attention is only on that and you're not thinking about the past or the future, and the problem ceases to exist. And this is the same when you're working on your goals. Sure, maybe you have a vision, a certain goal that you want to achieve, but what you need to focus on is that what you do every single day for it. And that means you are in the present, just focusing on these little steps that you take every day, and maybe in 1 year, in 2 years, you achieve that goal. But if you're only thinking about that goal the whole time, not doing anything about it because you're thinking about too much and being anxious that you might not achieve it, or
then-
thinking about your past
then-
and feeling like you're never going to get better, then
But in your statement, that doesn't make time our enemy. It's
we
our-
make it our enemy. I
Exactly,
guess. We make
exactly.
it our enemy.
because time in and of itself, I feel like, look at it from a different perspective. You know, when you start trusting time, as in you trust in the process, you
Mhm.
know, just like I've said that with
Sure,
time,
sure.
you grow older, you realize things, you learn new things.
The patterns or
The
like
patterns, the way you see yourself, like the way that I look at myself and how much I've changed throughout the years, which applies for everyone, of course. But at some point, for me, the conclusion was like, okay, I'm always gonna change, and time's always gonna be flowing.
But you see, trusting time then requires you to be a little bit older, because
sure,
how would you
sure,
develop this trust
Sure.
for time if you don't already have seen the same patterns repeating? Or
sure,
or maybe
definitely.
you're trying to learn a skill and
Definitely.
you already see how
But
much better you're getting.
I was just taking this as like an argument
Mhm.
against what you were saying, that time
Sure,
is enemy.
yeah,
You
I
know,
see that as
because
well.
like time can be an enemy, but time can be an ally as well.
we make it our enemy.
It depends on how we look at it and perceive it.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be always like a bad thing about it. Sure, even time going on can sometimes be the problem itself.
Mhm.
So look at it like this: if you lose somebody who's important to you, whether it was someone that you were in love with or some family member that passed away, people try to consult other people by saying that time goes on,
Mhm.
as a reminder that it's okay, the pain is going to go on.
Mhm.
But sometimes that's exactly the problem,
Yeah.
you know, because time is going to go on and that person is not in your life anymore. And then for some people, that's exactly the problem.
Yeah.
For some other, that's something that's consulting,
Mhm.
actually. Like,
It's very
right, this
subjective.
person died
That's why it's
today,
very- it's
but
very
time's
subjective.
going on. What I'm trying to get into here by saying all of this stuff is that time can be your ally, but time can be your enemy.
Yeah, it depends
It's
on your perspective.
Not just a perspective, it depends on the way that you try to look at it.
Mhm.
And it can be both at the same time as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Learning to trust time in the process, in and out of itself, takes time.
Yeah.
But like, even at this point, I'm starting to realize that everything that we go through is kind of just part of the human experience.
Mhm.
You know, even the past, the pain, the fact that we're growing older, the fact that time's going on, the fact that sometimes time slows down, it's all part of the human experience. And with time, I guess one day, maybe in the future, we'll be able to figure out what time is in the first place.
But this is the thing. It's like, I feel like we have now enough clues, or I don't know if you want to,
Mhm.
if you can call them evidence, that time is only linear in our perception.
Yeah.
But in objective reality, whatever that reality is, time is not like that. Time is not linear. We don't know what it is, but it's not linear. This is only our perception. And the proof for that is, I don't know if it's actually proof, but what gives you like clues that time is not
Mhm.
linear is when you, as you said, like if you're doing something you love, time goes so fast. If
Mhm.
you take psychedelics, time becomes really chaotic. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
going fast, sometimes it's going slow, and many different things that shows you that only in your, I don't know, only from our perception it's linear. But why is it subjective then? Why does it go fast for someone and go slow for another person? So this shows you that in that objective reality,
Mhm.
time is something else. So maybe time could be an object. It could be one thing
Definitely.
where
we don't know
everything
that.
happened in the
Mhm.
same moment, but only from our perception and experience,
Mhm.
we see it in that way. Realizing this shows you that time is truly subjective. And as you said, you can make it your enemy, you can make it your ally. So I guess I was wrong when I said time is the enemy.
Mhm.
It's just what we make out of it,
Mhm.
I guess.
Do you think people can, or how do you think people can come to trust time more? Either trust or let go of time, the concept of time, because both are kind of similar.
I don't feel like you can completely let go of the concept of time because it is a huge part of our experience.
But I'm talking about the concept that we have in our heads.
Mhm.
You know, that past is past, future is the future, and the present is now. And that time flows, and that, time.
You mean letting go of the linearity of time?
Yeah. Either letting go of that or becoming
I mean,
able to trust it a little bit more, trust time, and realize that with time, everything is bound to be okay.
what helped me is just honestly growing older. Like we'll go back to the
Mm.
same point that age plays a role in how
Mhm.
you perceive time and how you perceive your own experience. And you need to see certain patterns. You need to see that if you're old enough, you have experienced enough bad things and saw that they
Mhm.
led to eventually to good things. You saw the silver lining in bad events.
Mhm.
But if you're not old enough, you still don't have that experience. The good thing maybe didn't happen
Mhm.
yet. So why would you trust time? Why would you let go of time?
I look at
But
it.
when you see that things change, that life is always changing, that time is constantly changing as well,
Mhm.
then you learn to let go more. So I feel like age plays a big role. Maybe meditation,
Mhm.
psychedelics, anything that gets you out of your experience and make you see all of these events and time in a different way. So you kind of need time to understand time, I guess.
I guess so. It's really hard to explain as well, not just understand.
Mhm.
Because even when I look at time, the point where I started trusting time more was when I had enough proof, stack of proof, which we've talked about
Mhm.
before. Stack to proof that I can go through something and I know that I will be fine at the
Yeah.
end of it. Why? Because I've had similar situations multiple times in the past, which I've gathered or happened to me throughout
Yeah.
time. And when I look at them and I look at where I am right now, I'm like, okay, you're gonna be fine. Like you've been there before, you've done
Yep.
that multiple
Yeah.
times, and you know how you're gonna be at the end of it. Even not just this, just doing anything in general, as time goes on and as you stack more experiences and more
Proof.
proofs, your foundation becomes stronger, and then you can always go back to the foundation.
Mhm.
And once I started realizing that, like, okay, for example, I want to do this thing. I've done it before. I've started from scratch before, and now I want to get better, but I don't know how to get better. But I know that with time, I will figure out how to get better. Because when I started, I didn't know anything, and I managed to start and get better at the thing. And that plays, that started being kind of like a foundation for me.
Mhm.
And whatever happens to me throughout time, I remind myself that, hey, look at the foundation. We have been through this already. We have done this, or as we've
You kind
managed
of
to
see the
do it.
big picture more often, like not focusing on the momentarily. This is sound contradictory a little bit, but not focusing on the momentarily experience and seeing
Mhm.
the big picture that things will get
Exactly,
better. And this
exactly.
contradict what I
It's
maybe said before,
exactly
but
it's
that's
the
how it
same for me
works.
because it's like you're kind of going back to the past.
Or going
To
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 or seeing the big picture, how things will be
it's like
better late at some
exactly,
point.
exactly. It's like
But
that
you're still in the moment.
you're still going to the past to this because like you're going back to the experience that you started a few
But you're
years ago,
going to
and
it from a different angle. This is when you're not making time your enemy, but
you're
seeing it as
kind
an
of
ally,
using it as
using it
you're
for your
taking advantage
advantage.
out of it. Exactly.
So, like, yeah, you're still present in the moment, but
Mhm.
time will always play a role. You can't just completely get rid of the concept of time. You become more like when you
I
become more.
think get you can get completely rid of the concept of time,
Mhm.
but and that's a huge but. You can manage to free yourself of the consequences of time
Yeah, kind
and
of.
learn how to take advantage of it
Mhm.
in the sense of because time is flowing and it's in our subconscious mind and it's in our consciousness and it's in our being that we're always thinking about how time is flying and how time is passing and how time is maybe
Time is
not
just part of
passing,
us because
you
we
know
even have inner clocks.
but once you learn to once you learn that the past doesn't actually exist, nor does the future,
Mhm.
and you learn not to let time captivate you, even even when you're using time to your advantage, it can also be harming because you're using the past to set limits to yourself according to what happened in the past. But once you learn that all of this does not exist, all of this doesn't matter, you start becoming more present
Mhm.
and you free yourself of the agony of why this happened to me, why has this been happening to me, and all this kind of stuff. But no matter what perspective or how angle I take to look at it, it's always the same. It's like all of this is going to take time to understand.
Yeah.
And even when I'm saying this right now, I'm sure that in a few years, even my concept or my perspective on it is going to be different, because as time goes on, the way that I perceive time is going to be different.
If we want to tie this more to growth, there's something important I want to say, that I feel like you need to find the balance of how you approach time, I guess, because if you're someone who is trying to get better at a skill, or just working on getting better at anything, even if you're just like trying to be a better person and trying to get rid of some bad habits and building new habits, you need to be patient. You need to understand that these things that you're trying to achieve and do will take time, and so you need to have an idea of this big picture. So you need to use time as an ally to see how you were in the past, how things might change in the future. But at the same time, you need to balance that by being more present in the moment, that you're focusing on your progress every single day without dwelling too much on, oh, I'm not getting better. When will I get better? Will I always be like this, just like how I was in the past? So you really need to be careful how you are using time. You need to balance, like taking advantage of time, but also remaining present when you are doing your routine, the things that you're doing, that you're focusing on them and not being stuck in your head.
Definitely. But it's also being present definitely helps. And I'm going to just bring in another perspective really quickly. Even when we're talking about the future, being anxious of the future, you can fantasize or romanticize about the future.
Yeah, but
And then don't let that,
taking it too serious, not taking it
not just don't take it too seriously, don't let it take control of you. Like every now and then, when I'm bored or when I'm in bed,
daydreaming,
sure, I like to fantasize and romanticize about the future that I can have, and the different outcomes that every decision can get me. It's me not being present right now, but it's me kind of trying to romanticize the future and see where it could go. But then that just, like I said, like I just do this for a short period of time, either when I'm in bed or when I'm daydreaming.
Exactly. Focus on the short period of time.
Like sometimes when I'm laying down in bed and I'm trying
when
to
you
go
wake
to sleep,
up before you sleep,
I'm doing it like for like few minutes as like something to something fun to occupy my brain in. But just remind yourself that, or at least I have to remind myself that this is just my romanticization about the future, and
it's still
the
not
present
reality.
got nothing to do with
Exactly. And this is a really good example, because if I look at myself 6 or 7 years ago now, I would lay in bed, daydream about a future job that I have, or a future
and then
girlfriend,
you would
or a
believe
future
that you've got
something.
this life.
Not just that, I would spend hours daydreaming about the same thing while I'm not doing anything about it.
We go back to our.
This is where time becomes an enemy.
Chris' most important quote: thinking about the thing isn't doing the thing. You have to do the thing, so you do the thing.
Everything goes back to that. And this is a really good example of that. I guess the point I was trying to make, that you need to be present, and you need to take advantage of time, but not spending too much time in these fantasies, whether it's a fake memory of the past or a fantasy of the future.
Come back to earth, technically.
Come back to earth.
Have a reality check.
Yeah.
Which is something that
I mean, if you look at it, there's even types of meditations where you try to imagine a future life.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it can be very beneficial.
The reason why people do it is because, like we've said, the brain doesn't comprehend the difference between that or reality.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like you're instilling some kind of new
hardware.
Not hardware, but software.
Yeah.
You're instilling some sort of new program or new persona or new character trait in yourself, you know. When you imagine yourself to be grateful, that kind of teaches you how to be grateful. There's been even studies that showed that they brought two groups of people. One of them learned how to play the piano by exercising, and the other people had to fantasize, meditate.
I've read about that.
On how to play the piano. And if I'm not mistaken, after a week or something like this, they did new brain scans on them. They did it before and after. And they found out that both have developed new neurons connections that were related to playing the piano. Yeah. Even though one group didn't touch the piano, was just thinking about it and meditating on learning how
yeah,
to
without
without even
exaggeration,
touching.
without exaggeration, that really helps. I can relate to that. Before we end the episode, I just want to mention this, that when I work on my videos, when I
Mhm.
try to edit videos, sometimes I also like lay in bed and imagine, or maybe I'm in the bus, I would just imagine
The
how I want to
process,
do this,
yeah.
even though it's something maybe I didn't
Mhm.
do before, but how the process will go. And
Mhm.
when I go and apply it, it's mostly just like how it was in my head.
Mhm.
I'm like, fuck, that really did help.
Mhm.
Just meditating on the
insane.
process.
It's insane how the brain connects
Yeah,
things and just
you make
builds
it real.
new, yeah.
Even if it's something you didn't do before, or just
Which is kind of sort of what
it kind of has limits.
it's
of
what
course.
people call manifestation.
Yeah, it
you
has
know.
limits, but it's a good process. Can help you if you don't take
Definitely.
just spend your whole time just thinking about it and not doing anything. Then
It's not gonna get you
that's not
anywhere.
gonna get you anywhere. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.